everybody, JC here with another TNI toy review, and today we're taking a look at the new DC Collectibles New 52 Shazam action figure. This figure was just released this week, so if you're wanting to pick it up, you want to check your local comic book or specialty store or e-tailer. Now this figure comes packaged in your standard DC Collectibles packaging. For this particular figure, the package sports some white and red highlights to match the character. You've got the Justice League logo at the top. Then the figure is nicely displayed in the blister box packaging so you can see what you're getting before you buy it. And then down below is the figure's name, Shazam, along with the DC Comics and the New 52. Then on the one side you have the standard shaded in image of the character, like we typically see with DC Collectibles, and then on the other side a picture of the actual figure. And then below that you have credits. Now for this figure, they actually tell you that this figure is based on art by Gary Frank and that this figure was sculpted by Derek Miller. And then finally on the back you have a little brief bio for the character with a little thumbnail image at the top, and then underneath that we have basically a thumbnail for the Trinity War 3-pack that has a repack of the Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman New 52 figures, and then below that the original 7 figures for the New 52 Justice League line. So let's get this figure open and take a look at what's inside. Okay, so here's a look at the figure outside of the packaging. As with most of the DC Collectibles figures, you'll see that there's a lot of nice detailing with the paint apps, decent sculpting on this figure. You've got the little black, like, magical lightning on the lightning bolt on his chest. And then there's some nice dark shading throughout the body of the figure to give it added texture. He's got a rubbery cape, soft rubber cape, which is kind of done in 2 parts. Actually, it's not like this top half on the sides is kind of loose from the rest of the cape, but for the most part it's firmly attached. It's not like this is a separate piece or anything. Now one thing I want to note is about the hood on this figure. I actually like what they've done with this. It's not technically removable, but you can take it off the figure's head. You can pull it back, and his head's completely separate from the actual hood, which is nice. And so if you kind of want it so he's not wearing the hood, you can push it back like that, and it'll for the most part stay off of his head. So I think that's really nice. I like that. That you can, even though the hood's not technically removable, you can take the hood off. I don't know if technically they made it to take off, but you can. So I do like that. Now another thing I want to point out, which at first I thought was a little weird, is you'll notice that the top half of the figure, with the red areas, is a different coloring than the rest of the figure. Basically it's most notable here on the chest. You can see the top half here where my thumb is a shinier, glossier red than down here in the rest of the figure. Now I thought this was kind of weird, so I went back to look at like the comics to see if that's how it's portrayed in the comic books. And so it's not as noticeable in the comics, but like here on this cover for Justice League number 0, you can kind of see there's a difference in texture between the top half of the costume and the bottom half. And so that's what they were basically shooting for, I guess. So it's not bad or anything, it just kind of stands out. So you know, if you haven't looked at the comic book closely, you might be wondering why the 2 different shades, but basically that's how it's portrayed in the comic book. There is a little bit of a difference in texture between this top part of the costume where the lines are, which I guess is more of a supposed to be more of like an armor type feel, which is kind of in keeping with the New 52 costumes, and then with the rest of the costume. So that's actually a nice attention to detail, I think, from DC Collectibles, and you can see it on the back as well. Now, also one thing I want to point out, on the back on the underside of his cape, he's got some red markings. Not a big deal, since it's on the underside of the cape. And for the rest, the cape is basically just white. Not a lot of shading or anything on the cape. You've got the gold trim, which is nice. And then you've got the same gold trim on his, metallic gold trim on his belt and his wrists and his boots. And then the figure has one peg hole on the bottom. And the head sculpt, again, the head, if you pull back the hood, you can get a good look at the head sculpt here, which I think looks nice. I think they did a pretty good job with the head sculpt here. And they didn't give him like the whited out eyes for the magical look that you see often in the comics, and I think like the Mattel version of the New 52 had the whited out eyes. I don't really like the white out eyes, so I'm kind of glad that they just went with regular eyes on this figure. The Black Adam has that whited out kind of magic eyes look. So I'm glad with Shazam they went with a regular look without like the lightning magic type effects. Okay, so the figure stands with the hood on, stands just a little bit under 7 inches tall, about 6 3/4 high. He's about the same height as Black Adam. Black Adam doesn't have the hood on, but you can see they're about the same height. And then again, he's about the same height as Superman. So I think he's pretty good scale. So articulation on this figure, it's pretty standard with what we've come to expect from DC Collectibles. The head moves left and right, no issue. Again, you can pull the hood back. There's no real up or down movement to the head though, just got the left and right. But I do like that you can, even with the hood on, you can turn the head, which is nice. Standard ball hinge joints at the shoulder. Now the arm movement is restricted a little bit by the cape, even though the cape is a soft rubber material. It does, especially if you want to put it back, it hinders it a little bit, but you can still get pretty good movement out of the arm. He's got swivel at the bicep. He's got a single hinged elbow, but he can bend it pretty good at the elbow, and then he's got swivel wrists. No midsection articulation at all. Standard T-crotch design for the legs, so you can move the legs back and forward good, but no splits or anything for this figure. And then he's got the single hinged knee, but again gets pretty good bending movement from there. And then no ankle articulation at all. So again, pretty standard articulation for a DC Collectibles figure. That about does it for my review. I actually really like this figure a lot better than I thought I was going to. I like how the hood, you can basically remove the hood off the head and kind of put it behind the head. So I really like what they've done with the hood on this figure, and I think the hood looks good when you do have it on the head. A lot better than like the Mattel one. The overall sculpting and everything with this figure is really nice. Articulation is nothing great, but again, if you're collecting DC Collectibles, then you know what you're basically expecting with that. So overall, I think this is a pretty good figure. As I mentioned before, it's was released this week, so if you want to pick it up, check your local comic book shop or your favorite online e-tailer. And until next time, I'll check you later.